Hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon. I'm glad you're with us for another episode of Purpose Filled Life. Welcome. I hope you're having a great weekend. It is Saturday, December 12th, 2020. We finally made it to the end of the year. Terrence, how are you feeling?
I feel great over here. Happy Saturday to those that are listening. Congratulations, we've made it through another week. We are a little bit closer to Christmas. And then at the 1st of January, the year ends, and then we have to start a new year. So let's go ahead and stay positive and just bang it out the best way that we can. But today was a new episode. We're going to be discussing losing a loved one. So just be prepared for a little bit of raw, just life and background of everything that I've been through from my past. Hopefully, it'll help you guys if you're ever dealing with something of this nature.
Right. And I think it is a an important topic to discuss because not just for people who have lost loved ones, but for people who have never gone through that experience, and for them to know that they may have people that they work with, people that they may be friends with, who whether they realize it or not have had some experience, some measure of experience of losing someone, which if you've never lost someone, you really don't know what it's like to be in that person's shoes. And well, with that being said, Terrence, I'll let you tell the audience what that was like for you.
Okay. Well, first off, I would like to just thank just a few people just for being there for me over the years, just taking me in as a not only as a friend but just allowing me to be a part of their family. To the Tatum family, thank you so much. Those who know who they are, and to the Taylor family, thank you for just always being there for me and just making me a part of your family. It takes a real big person to do that, and so I just thank you for all the love over the years. You guys are awesome, and I really hope that one day you hear this and listen to this. But as for me, basically, growing up, I basically lost my entire family before the age of 15 years old. So I had to grow up really fast. I grew up as I grew up in a single parent home. My father, he passed when I was 4. So I grew up as a young man without a father.
Mhm.
My mother, she passed when I was 11. So then that's when things got a little shaky. And then I lost my sister at the age of 14 years old. So, you know, it's when you're put in a box like that, you really have to grow up really fast, and you have to be really strong. I am thankful for those that took me in. Basically, my mother's sister adopted me and took me in and made me a part of their family. So
Mhm.
basically, I learned a whole new life and a whole new way of living.
Mhm. Well, before you get into like what that experience is, what was like being living with your aunt, and I mean losing family at 4, 11 and 14. What can you tell the audience like what those memories were like
Um,
with with your family that you
okay.
can remember?
Well, Unfortunately, for my father, I lost him at such a young age, so I only know of him through the stories that my outside family members tell me. So that's that. For my mother, I just remember all the holidays and waking up every day and seeing her face, spending a lot of time with her. She actually struggled with something called an aneurysm. And for my listeners out there, aneurysm is basically a brain tumor, and it's formed. And if blood can't pass through, then it creates kind of a wall, and it builds up a lot of blockage, and it forms a tumor. And if the tumor bursts, then yeah, so that's how that goes. Unfortunately, she went to surgery, and we thought that we got all of them, and the doctor actually missed one, unfortunately, and over time it basically burst. But back to what you're asking, a lot of my memories are just of that, just spending family time with my mom and my sister. Yeah.
Was there a specific memory, whether it be going to the store or a certain holiday, or that you remember vividly?
For me, the most vivid memories, of course, are my birthdays because my mother would go all out for my birthday. Like whatever I wanted that day was all about me,
Mhm.
and of course Christmas. I never understood how there would be no presents under the tree, and she would still wait for me to go to sleep, and I would try to beat her to it, but I wouldn't see any presents. But then the next day I come downstairs and there's presents under the tree, and it's like, how did you do that? But it's really like I said, every day, man. Every day was just an awesome time with her. She would love to watch her soap operas. And then after that, I would want to watch my cartoons or play Nintendo 64 at that time. That every day was a good day. Absolutely.
Now, after you lost your mom, God rest her soul, when you were 11, tell us about the changes that happened afterwards. And I know you
Well,
said you meant you had to live with aunt.
yeah. So basically, my world went from 0 to 1,000
Mhm.
in less than like maybe 30 minutes. So basically, how the situation was brought to me was my neighbors at the time, they took me to this little cafe up the street, and I remember having this really bad like chicken sandwich and a hot chocolate, and they just gave me the news that my mother passed away. And I told them I already had that feeling, like I knew it because I felt something in my heart, like something felt off that day.
Yeah.
So basically, that transpired into my aunt coming in town and basically telling me that I had to make, a choice to either stay in Kansas or take a huge leap of faith and
Mhm.
move to Houston with her.
Mhm.
And basically, that turned into people basically just coming inside my house, and these were basically adults at the time. But what happened was basically the adults were doing their part and cleaning out the house. So take for just to put it in perspective, your most fondest memories are you, your mom, and your sister in this house, and your mother passes away, and then you got all these people that you've never met before just coming in the house because they're adults at the time and just boxing up stuff, taking stuff that isn't theirs, like, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Mhm.
Meanwhile, your whole life is about to be changed because you're about to move in with someone that you've never really had a relationship like that, before. But
Mhm.
you knew that it was better. It had to be better than where you were living before.
Right.
So that was one of the many steps of my life changing from that series of events. Basically, my sister ended up staying in Kansas, and we packed up everything into a car and drove from Kansas to Houston, Texas.
because that's where you grew up in. So Kansas was home,
Yes. Yep.
and then uh, your mom's sister, who's your aunt, was in Houston, and
Yes, sir.
so you and your sister moved to Houston at your aunt's place.
Oh,
Um,
see, let me edit that a little bit.
okay,
So basically, my sister ended up staying with her grandmother at the
okay,
time in Kansas. Basically, me and my grandparents didn't have that close of a relationship because my grandmother was a religious woman,
hmm,
and I was too young to understand that. It just wasn't cool to me. So she stayed in Kansas, and I
hmm,
moved to Houston with my aunt. So we were
okay,
separated.
okay. Dang, that's. I mean, to be split apart like that at such a young age. How do you remember how old your sister was?
My sister was, let me see, she had to be every bit of like 14 or 15, I think.
Okay, so old. Okay, older sister. Okay,
Yeah, yeah,
okay,
maybe
okay,
maybe older than that, but yeah, she was somewhere. She was in her late teens.
okay. So she's in Kansas and you're in Houston, and so you finally, you arrive in Houston. What was that like?
Uh,
Um,
the first days in Houston, as soon as we got out the car, I was just excited as a kid.
mhm,
I just lost my mom, and this is a whole new
mm,
life. So I'm excited to just get out and be a kid.
mhm,
So it took a while to adjust because you got a whole new set of parents, a whole new family, and you're still trying to figure it out yourself. So really, I'm gonna be honest. I was in Houston for like a couple months, maybe 3 or 4, and it I within a day we were already moving. It was just so much stuff that happened so fast because
mm,
my whole world had been changed. I don't even really remember Houston like that.
yeah.
So once we left Houston, because her husband at the time, which is my uncle, he was in the military, so he got stationed out in Tampa. So we actually ended up moving to Tampa,
Okay.
and Tampa is where I started, middle school. Well, I finished middle school, and then I went to high school out there. I played football and all that, and then that's when I found out that my sister had passed.
When you're in high school.
Basically, no, I was what, 15 years old. Yeah,
Okay.
14, 15 years old.
And
Yeah.
she being a bigger sister, she's probably in her 20s, maybe
Yes.
late.
Yes, she was 21 years old.
Okay.
So that
Wow.
that it kind of it was unexpected because I had
Yeah.
just spoke to her like 2 weeks before, and we were doing this thing that she was telling me that she was gonna come see me and I was gonna get to
Hmm.
see her.
Hmm.
And I remember sitting at home chilling, and my aunt came home one day, and she was with my cousin, and they both looked like they saw a ghost, and I instantly knew something was wrong. And they gave me the news,
Yeah.
and I was in so much shock because it was just like I just spoke to her like
Hmm.
2 weeks before that. So that was another growing stepping stone for me. I had to man up once again.
Hmm. Now, before she passed away, um, I want just what was your sister like, and what was, even though you all were separated, like you're in Tampa at this time, and I'm assuming she's in Kansas still.
Hmm. Hmm.
What So the times that you did get to meet each other, what was that like? What do you remember the most about your sister?
Oh man, she had this smile
Yeah.
and this giggle that would just light up the room. My sister,
Mm,
she did battle with schizophrenia.
okay.
Her real parents, her birth parents were actually on drugs at the time. So because of that, she had some mental issues.
Hmm.
But as a person, she was a beautiful person, just light up any scenery. She just wanted to be happy,
Hmm.
because of her because she was schizophrenic. her mental made her feel like she was younger than what her real age was.
Wow.
So you got this adult in the room with kid energy, and she just wanted to play and just have fun. The last time I saw her, she was getting ready to graduate high school, and she was all about it. She had her senior shirt, and she was telling me about high school and what it's like, and she was excited. That's the only word that I can think of. It's just the excitement because she did it, and anybody that graduates high school, it's like you got these people that tell you you're not gonna do it or whatever. We've all been there,
Yeah.
and she did it, and I remember it was,
Mhm.
I think it was like January or maybe December, Christmas time,
Mhm.
and it was really cold. I remember being really cold, but the last days that we spent together, she really was happy to see me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, I can't help but notice that you have faced loss of dad, loss of mom, loss of sister, uh, being uprooted from one location to another. The aunt you're staying with, her husband's a military man, so by virtue of that, you're constantly moving. As military, anybody who can relate to that knows what that means if you're part of a military family. So you just lost your sister. You're 15 ish years old. Did Were you able to was this by this time like, okay, I've lost so many people. I've I can, I've been there, done that. Um I've hurt before and I know how to overcome this, or was this devastating? What was going through your mind knowing that, okay, you just have your aunt and the family, and her family.
It was very devastating because in my mind, I basically thought that I would be going from having one mom to having another mom,
Yeah.
so that's what I was fighting for, as a kid,
Hmm.
but our relationships just weren't there, and then I had to get used to their way of basically raising their kids, and
Hmm.
living. It was something completely different,
Hmm.
and it took some time. It took some time because not only did I have to get used to them, they had to get used to me, So I wouldn't say it was bad, like anything like that. Like, they're great. They were great parents, and they
Hmm.
raised me the best that they could, and I'm thankful for it. It's just I had so much that I had to figure out in a short amount of time.
Yeah.
You got to think about it. I'm going through all this, and you know, I still don't have any guidance. So I'm basically just trying to make some friends and figure out who I am,
Hmm.
and still deal with my issues.
Yeah.
So I was just out there. I
Hmm.
was out there. I look at a lot of old pictures of me, and I'm like, man, I was just trying to figure it out as a
Hmm.
young man, you know.
Hmm.
And then we were in Florida for about a good 4 years, and then I moved here
Hmm.
to Gwinnett, Georgia, and that's where I kind of just started figuring who I was. I started learning Terrence, basically.
Hmm. Now, how would you have described yourself as a teenager at this time? What were your the things that were on your mind? What were your interests, your hobbies, things that gave you peace? I'm assuming what I mean, I'm assuming, and this is just an assumption, that you maybe had some sort of coping mechanism, or you did. I don't know. Did anybody give you counseling through middle school or high school?
Yeah,
Um,
I
okay.
mean, I tried the whole counseling and psychology approach. However, for me, it didn't work because basically these people are paid to listen to you vent, and I just felt like nobody really cared to listen to what I had to say.
Mhm.
The questions were so basic, I just felt like they were questions that they just pulled out of their hat. They weren't really trying to help. So that that alley didn't work for me. I played football. I did play football, which was a good outlet. I learned the meaning of being on a team and teamwork and all those things. I figured out that I like to run, so that helped. And I would say my outlets were being outside. I love to play sports, so that helped take my mind off of it. But I was still going through it, definitely.
Um, if you could go back and meet face to face with 15-year-old Terrence, what would you say to him?
I mean, honestly, if I could go back and look at me at that age,
Mm-hmm.
I would tell him just to not give up, to keep doing what he's doing,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because like I said, at that age, I had just lost my sister, and I was really just trying to figure it out. I had no no idea of what my next move was, you know. So I would definitely encourage myself to just keep going, no matter what, and learn who God is.
Okay. What I think that I want to echo that, because whenever I think about what I would say to myself, or I say things like to about myself, like, I known what I know now back then, in terms of knowing God and having a relationship with Jesus, and knowing the word, you know I think that would have made a world of difference. But here we are now. Um, thank God. Um, I want to let's talk about you're okay. So you leave Tampa, now you're in Georgia. You're in
Hmm.
Gwinnett.
Hmm.
How old were you at this time? By this time did you? I think you and I have spoken before. You said you went to Berkmar High School.
Yeah, that is correct.
Okay.
I came here at the age of like 17, 16, 17 years old.
Okay.
And basically, I went to Berkmar High School. And at that time, there was a Sonic right across the street.
Yep.
So
I
basically,
I remember that one. I remember
yeah.
that.
So I would leave work every day, or I would leave school every day and go straight to work.
Mm,
My the people that raised me, my adopted family, basically told me that once because I reached a certain age as a man, that it
mm,
was time for me to develop some type of responsibility. So had to get a job. So you know that turned into basically trying to be the cool guy in high school. Trying to make all the friends and all that. And then I'm every day after school, I'm going straight to work. Literally, that was my life.
how often did you work? Like 5 days a week, or like 2 days, or?
I think it was like probably about 4 to 5. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So busy.
Hmm.
Um, did y'all have the skates on by chance? I know the Sonics used to do the skates.
Yeah, some of us did skate.
Okay. Okay. So you're working, you're playing football, you're in high school. I went to Berkmar, for y'all who may or may not know. So I can see it in my mind. The Sonics from across the street, Pleasant Hill Road. You got the Chick-fil-A. You got the Waffle House. That's no. You got the Baskin Robbins. Um, yeah, Berkmar was. I mean, those were good years for me. Um, Fond memories. I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed Berkmar. What was Tell me, what was high school like for you? I know you did mention you had to work. What was your high school experience like?
All right, so we're gonna make a slight correction on that because I played high school while I was in middle school, but when I was in high school,
Hmm.
I didn't get a chance to play. But
Okay.
so moving forward,
Okay.
high school for me, man, it was so exciting. It was
Okay.
so exciting because it was just like I finally felt like I had kind of started to figure out the things that I like to do, the type of
Hmm.
music that I like to listen to.
Yeah.
I kind of learned my swag a little bit,
Hmm.
and I just wanted to be the cool guy, So yeah, I was a knucklehead, I made some bad decisions, but for the most part, it was just like, I met some friends that are still my friends to this day. Definitely, definitely,
Okay.
yeah.
Did you drive when you were in high school?
No,
You had
I did
student parking
not.
lot? Nah.
Nah.
Okay.
It didn't happen for me like that. But I went to homecoming. I never went to senior prom.
Uh,
Um,
Me neither.
but like I said, it was man. I just remember the fights and hanging out with your friends, and then
Uh,
hanging out with the boys during the weekend.
mhm.
It was all good times, man.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I didn't start driving until senior year, but it was the coolest thing coming up from starting as a freshman and seeing finally being at the place where you can like park in a student parking lot, and it was a good times. So you you graduated,
I did.
okay? You graduated high school, all right, and then what?
So basically, I graduated back in 2009
Mm-hmm.
from another high school, and I basically just started manhood,
Mm-hmm.
and that was an interesting time. That was a very interesting time. I I uh, I came back home because at the time, my aunt and her ex husband now they had split up, so
Mm-hmm.
they were doing their thing, so made that work. And then like I said, I just graduated, so I was trying to figure out what was going to be my next move. My aunt had this thing to where it was like, you're either going to go to the military or you're going to go to college, one or the other,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't want to do either. So she was like, well, you got to move out. So, I learned what it was like to be on your own real quick, and I moved in with some friends and bounced around a lot, but I kept working and
Mm-hmm.
staying out of trouble. Never went to college. I just worked all the time,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But then you get older, and you're still dealing with a lot of pain from the things that you had went through in your past,
Yeah.
and it still hurts, and you're trying to find peace to that,
Mm-hmm.
on top of dealing with other stuff. So I did struggle with, alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
I used to be a big time alcoholic because I just wanted to make the pain go away. That was really my goal. When I couldn't sleep at night, so I would just drink and drink and drink. Especially, I'd say probably like 21. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
from 20 21 probably till about maybe 28.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely did struggle with alcohol.
How'd you overcome that?
Honestly, going to church, I started, I've always been to church. My mom kept me in church as a young kid, you
Mhm.
know, but I found a couple different churches out here and they didn't work out. But then I found another one, in which was C3, and just the outpour of love. I received a lot of love from people that I had never met before, and it was the best thing ever, and I started to understand that I had more life to live. I just at the time I was afraid to live because I didn't want to live. It's like I'm here by myself. I'm all alone. My family isn't here. I felt like I was being punished. And
Wow.
the pain just wouldn't go away. It
Mhm.
felt like having a huge hole in your heart, and then it hurts. So you just drink, you drink, you drink, you drink, and the more you drink, the more you think about it,
Mhm.
and it never stops, and it just never stopped. And then I went to church, and I met one person and gave them my life story, and they prayed over me, and they introduced me to another person, and then it just slowly started building into all these people that just they showed that they cared, and they wanted to hear me. And then one day I just decided that I just didn't want to do it anymore. I didn't want to drink. And of course, growing up, I had some friends that I mentioned before that really took me in and made me their family. So that really helped out too. Definitely.
Okay. So you talked about working. Um, so right now you're in your 20s. Tell us more about what your 20s was like. Graduated high school and being a man out of your aunt saying, "Hey, got to go figure it out. You're out."
Okay. So basically, you can't go back home.
Mhm.
So if things don't work out, you got to keep moving. So I had my very first apartment, and it was great for like the first year. I got to see what it's like. And then the overhead came in, your bills and responsibilities. So I left that apartment and got another apartment. And, the same thing happened there. So basically, that that turned into, well, where am I going to go? Where am I going to live? I got to survive. So you find yourself moving into these extended stays to where you're paying like, $50 a night or $25 a night just to sleep, because you still got to work, so you just do what you can. It's a hustle. So basically, I would work hard enough to make sure that I had a room to sleep in at night, and then you know make sure I still could eat food and all that. Yeah, yeah.
Were now were you ever to let me ask you, did you ever get in contact while you were, going in and out of hotels, trying to survive? Did you ever, like, I guess, reach out to your aunt or some family support, to see if, if you could come back or
I mean, that's the thing. You know what I mean? It's like they knew what I was going through,
mm,
and I would talk to them, because I would reach out to them.
mm,
But it was kind of like, they that's just how they were. They just told me, you're a man now. You got to figure it out. Because basically I had made my bed and laid in it. I didn't take the route that they gave me. I took my route in life. So yeah, it's difficult, and I understand that. But you can't come back home. You got to figure it out on your own. So I've had a couple roommates in my day, to
mm,
make it work. But you know you do what you got to do to survive.
yeah. I mean,
There, I
just
let
yeah,
me
go
just
ahead, go
clear
ahead.
the air real quick. I did come home a few times,
Hmm.
but it was like there was an understanding that if you're gonna come home, you got a 3 month, grace period or a 3 month lease,
Hmm.
and you got to figure it out. I don't want to make it seem like they just had me out there in the streets, like in the cold,
Hmm.
but they did, you know, teach me the hard knocks of life.
Hmm. What was the most challenging part of just having to be on your own and, you know, trying to be an adult and not having a family support system at that somebody who has a bunch of siblings and parents who check on them or who who say, hey, when are you going to come over? How do you deal with that as a person in their 20s? um you know Me trying to put myself in your shoes, what because my just a contrast, what my experience, like, I have two parents. um I live with them, and when I hear your story, I'm I don't know how I'd be able to, you know, figure out how I'm going to support myself and where am I going to stay, and it's like your whole life is swept right under your feet, and you literally have to figure things out, seek a solution. Um so like what was the most challenging part about that, whether it be an emotional challenge or practical challenge, like how I'm gonna pay for this or do that. Maybe it wasn't financial, maybe it was just the emotional aspect or psychological. Who can I trust? um
Well, for me, one of the biggest challenges was, you're going through life and you can't call your mom, you know. It's not like you could say, "Hey, mom, I'm having a bad day. Can I come see you?" Or you can't call your sister or anyone. You know what I mean? You got friends,
yeah.
that you can call, but it's not the same love. So it's like there's no release. It's like you got all this on top of your shoulders, and sometimes you just wanted a hug from your mom, but you
Yeah.
couldn't get it. So there's no escape. There's none whatsoever. And then it's like you don't want to be that guy that's constantly, down all the time around his friends or whatever. So
uh,
you just hold all of it in. You hold it all in,
mhm.
and you're still smiling and trying to deal with life and just making it through.
Yeah.
But then it's like holidays. You really don't have that. You're looking around and everybody's spending time with their mom or their family. You don't
Mhm.
have that. You're with someone else's family, or your family's already split up because, like I said, they were divorced. So,
Mhm.
us coming together, it didn't really happen like that. You know, it was rough. It was real
Mhm.
rough. Definitely rough. Birthdays were horrible. Christmas was horrible. And holidays, that's where I picked up all the drinking. That's how that happened.
Mm.
You know, I got so comfortable drinking with my friends that I started to drink by myself. And then, that turns into, well, I don't have nothing else to do, so I might as well just, drink and drink and drink. And you're just trying to numb the pain because it hurts. And
Yeah.
and no one you feel like no one understands. So there's no point to even speak on how you feel. So just drink until it goes away. And you just keep drinking and drinking and drinking until you can go to sleep. And it was not okay. Let me just say that it was not okay.
Yeah.
But at that time, there was no other cure that I could think of to make the pain like numb, you
Mhm.
know, besides just drinking until I pass out.
Mhm.
So
So you have all you're trying to numb the pain or at least try to ignore the Christmas lights and the Christmas songs and people, it's supposed to be a joyful time of the year and people being happy and families are doing a lot of shopping and you are meanwhile you're dealing with trying to be a man. You have pressure to perform and to work and live your life as if everything is okay and not come to work depressed all the time, yet you can't really shut off those emotions on command. And I can see how that can be like torturous almost because the next year there's going to be another Christmas or Thanksgiving,
right,
and
it
then the
it, it
following
never
year.
goes away.
Right.
Never goes away. You know, you're constantly reminded of it. You know,
Mhm.
even if it's not a holiday, you know, you're a waiter and you see the father and the daughter are the
Yeah.
mother and the son, you know, and you're looking around and it's just like people don't even understand how lucky and fortunate they are to even be able to spend time with their family, you
Wow.
know. So you know, but it's not their fault. You know,
Hmm.
you can't just walk around being angry at the world because you've lost your parents. You know, that's not how life works. So I definitely, that is something that I chose not to do. I was not going to be that guy to just
Hmm.
be angry all the time. I tried to do the best I can and just be nice to people because I understood that life is really short, extremely short. You know.
I'm curious, were you able to ever um, find somebody, a friend, even a colleague, or of any sort that could relate to your experience?
Yeah.
Because I know, okay, okay.
Like, do you mean like in aspect to someone who was there for me while I was going through this experience, or someone that's been
Um,
through?
who's been through your experience, who's lost person? Because I feel like I don't think you know even myself as close as we are and as brothers. um I don't think you know I could truly understand what you've gone through unless I've gone through it myself.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you 110%. I mean, there's people that I know that have lost people who are close to them,
Hmm.
but they haven't dealt with what I've dealt with. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But my loss is no greater than someone else's loss. You know, there I don't look at myself like that. I don't say I'm stronger than someone else because I've been through this. You know, I might not be able to walk in their shoes, and they might not be able to walk in mine. You
Hmm.
know, that's just that's how life is. You know, I'm just thankful enough that I chose to love versus letting my situation defeat me. You know, because
Right.
I did have a lot of anger in my heart because I just felt like I didn't understand why I was still here. You
Hmm.
see what I'm saying? It's like God, you've taken the some of the most important people to me, and you've left me here. Why? You know, what did I do to deserve that? You know, and then I felt like I didn't, like I was being punished, or like I wouldn't, like I didn't deserve my parents, or that, you know, I felt a whole bunch of feelings, and then finally after a while I just chose to make peace with it, you know, and I decided that, hey, you know, no one is promised. forever. You can either let this thing beat you and defeat you, or you could take a look around and understand that you're still breathing, you're still living. So appreciate that, and just be thankful for the memories that you did have with your mom and your sister, and be thankful for all the lessons that she gave you while she was here, and then that brought a lot of peace to me. It helped give me a lot of closure. And then just understanding that, while she was here, my mom was not in pain, except for the last days that she was here. But my mom was always happy and smiling and goofy, just happy all the time, and was very sweet. I have no regrets about her life or anything like that, so it doesn't do any justice to walk around sad just because she's physically not here. I've gained one of the best guardian angels before, and that it takes time. That's one thing I will admit. It takes a lot of time. For some people, it takes less. For some people, it takes more. But the key is just when you're ready, choosing to get up and fight again because that's what they want. You got to live for them.
Tell what is go having gone through what you've gone through. Your tell me you're 32,
31.
31. Okay. And what what is life like now? I know you've got some maturity, and you've seen some things, you've gone through a bunch of stuff, you've been through the hardships. Um is there anything that you can be thankful for? Um I know you mentioned your family and the friends who you've been able to rely on. But is there anything you can appreciate having gone through the kind of those tough experiences, especially the toughest experiences?
Well, I'll just touch on a couple things.
Okay.
For one, the relationship that I have with my stepdad. Now we have a tighter bond now, a closer
Mm-hmm.
bond than what we had before.
Mm-hmm.
Before, you know, I was looking at him for a father son type of love, and he was looking at me as uncle, nephew type of love, So growing up, I was just fighting for more time with him. I always wanted to spend time with him, and
Mm-hmm.
he wasn't used to that. And now, we spend a lot more time together. We talk all the time, but I had to let him know that basically what it came down to was we were sitting down at his house one day, and I told him, I said, this is all I ever wanted. And he's like, well, what are you saying, son? I'm not understanding. He's like, I told him I just wanted to spend time with you, Dad.
Yeah.
I just wanted you to love me as your son, you know. So I'm thankful for that. Like I said, I'm thankful that the same friends that got me through a lot of the tough times, they showed me a lot of love, are still here,
Mm-hmm.
and now they have kids, and we're all growing old together. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like having another family. Even though I don't have my blood family, I have another family. You know,
Mm-hmm.
uh, my niece, she healed basically everything that hurt. And any type of pain that I witnessed or went through, she took it all away.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely thankful for that. I have a brotherhood of friends that we really just look out for each other. We call each other and we're there for each other, and I'm thankful for the peace. I can honestly say that I made peace with a lot of things that
Mhm.
before just didn't make sense to me, and in order to escape it, I had to look at different substances, and now I can honestly say that I don't have that pain anymore. That I've closed that chapter in my life, so I don't need those things.
I mean, there's a lot of questions on my mind. One of them being, so you talked about your niece. Um, do you ever do you ever? I can't help but wonder, like, if I put myself in your shoes, like, am I? I would ask myself, am I cursed, or am I going to face death? And just thinking what my thoughts would be if I was in my
Yeah.
teenagers, in my 20s. Am
Oh yeah,
I ev-
definitely.
am I ever going to have a family? Um, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, that's definitely something that I went through, and I used to think like that as a young man. I used to really think that I had a curse
Hmm.
because I had lost so many family members, and I was the only one still living.
Right.
I felt like I had this cloud of darkness over me, and that you know that I did something wrong or somebody put some type of spell on me, and I was just forced to be here by myself alone.
Mhm.
you know, but no, it's that's not how life works. But it that was another growing step for me. I had to really take some time to deal with that and understand that no, Terrence, you're not. These things have happened to you not because of something that you've done to deserve that. You see what I'm saying? You know, um, there's a lesson behind everything that you go through in life. Some lessons are harder than others, but there's something that we're supposed to learn. And I understood that the things that I went through as a young man can help someone else later on down the road. You know, so I kind of I owned it. I said, okay, yeah, this is something that I've gone through, but I made it out. You see, now which direction am I going to take?
All right. And I think that's a question we constantly have to ask ourselves when we come to a crossroads and we're deciding where should I go from here. Or And the cool part is God, who has our identity, who's the author of our life. When we feel when we're at a crossroads and when we ask these questions like, where should I go? I think the cool thing is, like, you and I both know, like, we can go to God and in prayer and ask God, where should I, like, who else than the creator, right? Who else than the person who gave us life? Um, I don't want to end on a negative note. Um, Quite opposite. I want to end on a positive note. Terrence, is there any words of encouragement that you have, um, for people who've been adopted, for people who have been through orphan homes, who have lost life? Because these are the types of people who I feel like we forget, and their experiences are just as valid as mine, and if not more significant, because these are the people that we need to have at the forefront of our mind, because it really would be selfish for me to us to just think that everyone thinks like me or everybody has the same experiences like me. I feel like a lot of us do that, and we kind of neglect or not aware of the people around us and their experiences. I just want to share a quick story. I had a coworker back when I was at Publix, and he had told me that he invited another coworker who was with us, works with us, and to his home. He had, I think, his son was about 1 or 2 years old, and he invited him to be Santa. And what my coworker didn't realize was that he was a orphan growing up. Um, and he was from New York, and that experience for him to dress up as Santa and just create joy for that family and that kid, his son. Um, he said that meant a lot for him because, echoing what you said, Christmas and Thanksgiving is a hard, tough, possibly traumatic experience because it's reoccurring. It brings up a lot of uh, things that you try to push down. You try to kind of, you know, not show, not show those emotions, but those emotions they creep back up. And so when I hear your story, I think about him and how his experience was unique. It was different from mine, and that his unique was valid and important, and it changed my life forever because um people come from different backgrounds. You never know what people are going through, what they've gone through, and it's a different type of lens. I mean, hearing your story, it's just so different. Yet you wouldn't know until they share it. And I'm glad that he expressed his gratitude. He felt very emotional being in the Santa suit. Um, you know, I mean, it meant the world to him. Um, it was special. It was a special moment for him. Um,
Well, definitely. I definitely would first like to send my condolences to anyone that's experienced any type of loss this year.
yeah.
2020 has wiped out, unfortunately, a lot of people. So, uh, to everyone, anyone, men or women, that's experienced any type of losing of a family member or someone that was close to you, let me just extend my biggest arm of love and
Mhm.
condolences to you and your family. Those that have gone through what I've been through to a certain extent, and we didn't even cover everything. There'll be episodes for that later on, guys. But to anyone that's been adopted or have lost a mother or a father or a brother or sister, I want you to know that you're not alone and that you do count and that your opinions are valid. You haven't done anything wrong to deserve what's going on to you. It's not your fault. That's the biggest thing that I would like to say is that it's not your fault and that you matter.
Right.
Another thing is I want to encourage everyone that everyone deals with everything differently. For some, they're cured medicine.
Mhm.
For some, it may be another form. You have to find the best meaning, the best option for you. So if it's counseling, get counseling. If it's psychology, get that. If it's writing a journal down and jotting down your ideas, the biggest thing is to take whatever's irritating you or any feelings that you have and get it out of you in a positive manner. Alcohol and substance abuse is never good. So if you're dealing with that, I want to encourage you to professionally just get some help. get help. And you know if you can't, if you don't have anyone, they got 1-800 numbers out there, y'all, to to assist you. You're going to be anonymous. Nobody's going to write down your notes or anything like that. It's just you have someone to vent to. The biggest thing is getting it out. Like, just get it out. It's okay to cry, it's okay to hurt, but release it, and just know that if you are here, then that is evidence that you have a future and that you still have the end of the tunnel. So take the time that you need to grieve. It's okay to grieve, but don't stop fighting. I want to encourage all my listeners out there that it is okay to hurt. It is okay to hurt. I understand. If anybody understands, it's me. I've been there. But when you're ready, you have to keep fighting, because that you still have a lot of work to do, and that is what they would want you to do.
So
And to
yeah, go
any
ahead.
of my listeners out there, to any of my listeners out there, if you ever need anyone, to talk to, feel free to drop a comment, and we'll try to respond to it the best way that we can.
Mhm.
I will personally try to respond the best way I can. Get yourself involved in a church or any type of community group that will help you.
Yes, and I would say the same thing. The Bible talks about confessing your sins to one another and praying for one another that you may be healed. The prayer of a righteous person has great power. It is working. And when you're confessing your sins, it is, you know, to sin is to miss the mark. Um, and it's not just about confessing the bad things that you've done, but it's confessing the you know the the things that are hidden in our hearts, that we, whether it be pride or shame, that's keeping us from sharing it with the brother. And the awesome part, man, Terrence, I've told you everything, man. Like, uh and like I've it feels so good to have a brother to talk to, and to you know share your struggles, the dark heavy stuff, like not the light stuff, like, oh, I had a bad day. I'm talking about like the dark stuff that you don't want to tell anybody, that you don't want to post on Facebook. You don't want the world to know. You don't want, some of us, you don't even want your church to know because you're ashamed of it or you're too proud of it. But you've got to, the Bible does say confess, um, and just get it out, just like what Terrence said. I think um, awesome. Not just advice, but principle to live by. And that's something I try to follow up, because it's not easy. It is not easy to tell your junk, you know, and give somebody else trust, right? The trust to carry your junk, um, let alone
Yeah,
take on
it's
their
not
junk.
easy at all, but you got to do it.
Yeah.
You got to do it. You got to have at least one person in your corner that's going to listen to you. But it starts by you being able to listen to that person. You know, you can't expect someone to give what they're not receiving. So even though you're hurting, try to keep your heart open for someone else, and be a listening ear for someone else, because you just never know what someone else is going through. They might be going through the same thing that you're going through, and they just waited for someone just to open up to them about their issues so they can open up too. So
Hmm.
definitely, when you feel comfortable, move in love and just try to spread love to as many people as you can.
Yeah.
That's all I got.
Well, Terrence, thank you for pouring your heart out. And I my hope and prayer is that this blesses you, whoever's listening, that there is a positive impact, and this will um this may even help somebody course correct their life who've experienced loss, or who hasn't. Maybe this, if you're like me and loss hasn't has is not something that has befallen on you, then hopefully it's given you a unique perspective. And if you experience loss, then I hope this has encouraged you and has given you some a little encouragement to keep you, not just to keep you going, but keep you on the right path, and to know that we're here. Um, you have a brother, you got brothers behind you who love you and are praying for you and want the best for you. So we'll wrap up this episode. Terrence, again, thank you for sharing, for pouring your heart out, and I think people will be blessed by it.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. That is a wrap, ladies and gentlemen. We will see you in our next episode.